Welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. Hey everyone, I'm Mark Moyer, author of Win Again, speaker, career coach, and business advisor. And I help athletes, executives, and entrepreneurs reach their fullest potential. What you're going to be hearing in every single episode are conversations with athletes and other sports-related influencers. And we'll be offering you the insight that you need to succeed in life, including advice that will let you jump past your competition, whether it be for a great new job or taking your business to a much, much higher level. Make sure to connect with me on social media at Mark Moyer Coach and go to my website, markmoyer.com, to get access to the tips and strategies that my coaching clients get directly. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email to mark@markmoyer.com and I'll get you going right away. Thanks for joining me today. It's going to be an awesome episode. Now, are you ready to make your mark? Let's do this. Hey everyone, welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. My name is Mark Moyer and I'm broadcasting to you live from New York City. And I'm thrilled to have you here wherever you're listening. If you're here in New York, anywhere else in the United States, or anywhere else on the planet. Thrilled to have you. And today's guest is Grace Luczak. And Grace is an incredible athlete. I mean, she was an Olympian, but since that time, she's got a world record. I mean, an impressive background, but she's also a professional and she's really making great strides. Can't wait for you to hear the story. But before you do that, leave me a review on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, wherever you're listening. Send me an email directly to mark@markmoyer.com. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, go to my website, markmoyer.com, where you can have access to all the previous episodes, which were all amazing, of course. And on top of that, get great access to content that will really put you ahead of any competition you have, whether it's for your career or your business. You're going to love it. But let's get on with the episode. Grace is great. You're going to love this. Happy listening. Hey everyone, welcome to the Make Your Mark podcast. I am Mark Moyer and I'm excited to have Grace Luczak on with me. She's amazing. She's fabulous. She's smart. She's beautiful. She waves her hands. She does lots of great things. She's an incredible athlete, but also now has a great gig, but I won't tell you where yet. But say hi, Grace.
Hey, and I'm impressed you got my last name right. That's a tricky Polish last name that I even got wrong for most of my life. We had a world competition over in Poland. And in 2009, I lost my room key and I went to the front desk and I was like, hey, can I have a new room key? They're like, yes, just tell us your last name. And I was like, oh, it's Luczak. And they typed it into the computer and they were like, you mean it's Luczak? And I was like, well, I don't know my own name. I don't have a key. Clearly I need help. Please help me.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for the clarification. What rhymes with key now? Let's go. Come on. Oh my God. Yes. Well, it's funny because my last name, people mistaken it for a variety of different things. They'll say, is it German? Is it Irish? Is it this? Is it that? Is it Jewish? And I said, no, it's Pennsylvania Dutch, which I don't really know. I think that's German. I mean, my ancestors, for some reason, you can go all the way back. And apparently one of the people was on the Mayflower somehow. So my dad's side of the family's been kicking around here for a long time. But I get a lot. I mean, look, last names, it's funny. When people say, oh, you have such a beautiful name, or they don't tell you that, you kind of like, what do you say? I mean, we didn't decide that stuff, right? It was kind of handed to us. So there, how about that? Well, Grace, look, I know that, you've had a really exciting, as far as I'm concerned anyway, athletic career, and you've transitioned into the professional world. But what I'd love to do is maybe start off, and if you could tell me, what got you interested in competitive rowing in the first place? I mean, what made you wake up one day and said, you know what? I really want to like bust my butt and train like crazy to send this boat from here to there. What made you do that?
Yeah, what made me want to sit down, go backwards, do the same thing over and over again for like 5+ years. Yeah, so I actually started rowing in high school thanks to my mom reading the New York Times. So she read this article that said, the headline was, do you have tall daughters? And I have an older sister, a year older as well. And she was like, yes, check, number one. Do you want them to go to college for free? Well, sure, check. Have them learn rowing. And so my local high school, a public high school in Ann Arbor, Michigan, Pioneer High School, had a rowing team. And I transitioned from the other tall people sports with basketball and volleyball and found my way splashing around in the water for a while. So that was my intro.
Well, wait a minute, splashing in, but you weren't yourself splashing in, you were making splashes because you didn't do the water polo direction. You forgot, you could have done that.
Oh, I could have. I guess I missed my calling.
Because I know.
Maybe I'll go back and train 2020.
Oh, dear God, don't do it. Don't do it. Although I have respect, not to deviate from rowing, but I don't know if how much you've watched water polo, but that takes some serious, you got to stay afloat while you're getting other people holding your head underwater and they're spiking the ball around. That's a crazy sport. But anyway, so back to the rowing. You started doing that in high school, and was it a big high school team or not really, or what was it like?
Yeah, it was actually one of our largest sports. So we overtook cross country and all the other sports because we would accept everyone. And the sport of rowing is also known as a discipline because it's the more that you work, the harder you work, the more you get out of it. Okay. And so it's just like anyone that was willing to work hard and go for a lot of runs on land because we didn't have enough boats was welcome to join the team.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And what is because Michigan is not exactly known for its warm climate, I guess. So what is the actual boating season there?
Well, it depends on how many layers you throw on, because you can end up being like the Michelin man with like lots of vests and coats and still be able to somewhat move in a rowing motion, which was my mode for survival. Because I actually went to the University of Michigan my freshman year.
Okay.
And I came to realize this later in life that Michigan was actually cold when I was rowing outside in November and December in Michigan, and we'd try and get out on the water in March. And I wised up and I went out to California to Stanford for the rest of my college career.
Yeah, I'm sure having the waves lapping over the thing and the little chunks of ice getting through the icebergs and stuff was a little challenging, but not in Stanford. So you get to Stanford, and what's the competition like there for the rowing team?
So we actually had 2 Olympians that were already on our team. Which is a pretty good setup. Most sports, interesting thing about rowing is that when you can learn how to do it in college and then go on to be an Olympian within like the next 4 to 8 years.
Okay.
So it's kind of truly unique. It's not like gymnastics where you start from age 5 or swimming. Right. And so we would have people that were Olympians and had taken a year off to go compete in Beijing in 2008.
Okay.
And then people that were just learning how to row. So it was this huge array of talent and kind of everyone trying to push up the level. But I was lucky enough to be there when we won the national championships in 2009. So it was a high performing team for sure.
Wow, cool. And so your particular expertise or was a 2-woman boat, or what are the different varieties of competition in rowing?
Yeah, so the races are all 2,000 meters. Okay. This is at the Olympic level and for NCAAs, which is 1.25 miles for everyone that's like not in the metric system. And sometimes it's better, like I think, to be in the unaware world, because as long as you're like, okay, we're halfway and we're 3/4 of the way through, that's really all you need to know.
Of whatever it is, right? Yeah.
Of whatever it is, at whatever X distance. Right. But rowing is a power endurance sport. So you end up training, doing as much volume as a marathon runner would. And then you have to have the strength aspect as well. So it's a lot of weightlifting and making sure that you're strong. And you get into either a 1-person boat, a single, a pair. And there are 2 different types of two-person boats. There's a pair or the double. Okay. And I'll explain that in a second. But for now, I'll just be in the dark. And then a 4, a quad. Again, the difference is there. And then the 8-person boat. Okay. So basically there's sculling where you have 2 oars, like a skull and crossbones, where you'd have 2 oars there. And sweeping, you'd only have 1 broom you're sweeping with. So you have 1 oar as well. Yeah. For when you're sweeping around your house, I'm sure you know. So
that's, well, obviously, if I turn the camera that way, you could see that I've got the life vest anyway, but not the, oh no, I've got some oars too. Let me go get that. No, I'm kidding. And the floaties too. But no, so you're saying that, so a pair and the double is, the difference is, as you said, either this or one side or one side.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah. There
which was your favorite?
So I raced in the Olympics in the pair, which was sweep rowing, which is one oar. And I love that. That was one of my favorite boats, that and the four, because it's, you just have a couple of people that are all coalescing together. You still have the team aspect.
Right.
But in a pair, you're literally balancing each other out. It's you and one other person. So if the boat like falls over to your side, clearly it's like you to blame or someone else behind you. And that's it. So you have a lot of responsibility, but then also still have the team aspect as well.
What's interesting, as you said, with the pair is that it really is a balancing act. It's because not only is it something that has to do with your strength, but your strength needs to be the same as your partner's, right?
Exactly.
The same timing, the same everything.
Everything. Yeah. Otherwise you end up going in circles. And when you're going on a straight line race, then you don't want to add any circles.
So well, that would be, they should do a circle race. That'd be interesting.
Yeah. Around an island, maybe.
Yeah. We're on to something here.
One person gets a great workout.
Yeah. And the other one's just doing the backward thing, like just the dragging. Yeah, keep going, Jimmy. Come on. Anyway. All right. So anyway, you get into this rowing thing. And so how much, while you're at Stanford, how much training did you have to do? I mean, was it something you had to do, 2 hours a day, 5 hours a day? Like how much time did it take away from everything else? Like whether it was your studies or your social life or whatever, what was it like?
So there was this common knowledge that you can really only do two things well when you're kind of in anything at life, but specifically at college, people would narrow it down to, you have options. You can have a social life, you can do well in school, you can do well in sports, pick two. And so
sports took the hit. Go ahead.
So rowing out at Stanford, another thing that we had to kind of hurdle over was traffic. This sounds like a ridiculous thing, but we had to wake up at 4:15 in the morning in order to get out on the water, have that flat morning water, and then have a buffer time for the 45 minutes, sometimes an hour that it would take to get back into school, which I think is even worse now because Bay Area with all those techies, and everyone getting to work.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think people think when they think of a collegiate sport, they always think that, the field is right there, the rink is right there, the pool is right there, but you've got to find open water to go onto.
That's exactly it. Yeah. So we would train on an inlet of the bay.
Okay. Yeah. Now, would you always train at 2,000 meters or was it a shorter thing and you just kind of doubled it or something, or what'd you do?
Yeah. So the area where we would practice, you had a lot of open water to do a lot of mileage.
Okay.
And our training program was focused on exactly that. Get in as many kilometers as you can, build up your aerobic base, because it's literally building, you're changing your physiology where you're building more capillaries. And I'm pointing at my hands because you can start to see on your hands like how your capillaries will change. So you build up this whole aerobic system and you're trying to get blood quickly as possible to all your muscles. And rowing is a total body workout. So it's capillary growth and, making your heart more efficient all across the board. So that just requires time and effort on repeat.
Now, was there ever a time where you were thinking, you know what, I can see over, because you were in the Bay, right? San Francisco Bay? I mean, the Bay Area Bay? Okay.
Yep.
So did you ever look off over there and say, there's Alcatraz? Think we can get there?
So we'd make it we had one of our big workouts was to the San Mateo Bridge. So we'd go out that direction. I don't know. I've honestly blacked out how long it takes, but it's quite an extensive row and you do it on Saturday morning only because then you have all day to get back basically. But yeah, we weren't like open water rowing. That's a whole nother element because your boats are, for an 8-person boat, it's like 150 or 200 pounds. For the 60-foot long boat, it's super narrow, like it's like 2 feet across, so your hips fit in it, and like your water bottle, and like that's about it. It's like very minimal, made of carbon fiber, super light and strong. But if you started hitting those oceanic waves and going up and down, I think that would you would test the limits for sure.
You would be quickly paddling harder and not getting anywhere because you'd be sinking. Yeah. All right. So so Alcatraz, let's cross that off the list. Not a good plan to row out to Alcatraz. And I'm sure there are lots of reasons why. So you've done all this rowing, and what point did you start realizing that, you know what, I'm actually pretty good at this and I might have a shot?
Well, I don't know if I was actually very good in the beginning, but people realized that I was tall and that I had potential. That was a word I heard over and over again, like in high school even. They were like, you have potential. Like, let's just keep working on this.
Okay.
And so I started doing the US teams. There are like 3 different levels. There's the under 18, under 23, and then the Olympic senior team level.
Okay. All right.
So I started doing that high school age one when I was in high school, and we were the guinea pigs basically for the Beijing Olympics in 2008. So the year before, in 2007, as high schoolers, we went over to Beijing. We arrived in the airport. We were inside of the airport terminal, and it looked like it was like 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. And we walked outside, and we opened up the doors, and there was bright sunshine coming at us. But the windows were so caked with
the soot and stuff,
soot and everything from the air quality that you couldn't tell what time of day it was. So we helped sort that out, hopefully, for the 2008 Olympics.
Nothing like breathing one for the team. Yeah,
that was
great.
it.
Jeez. Yeah. Did you have to wear the masks or not really?
We didn't ever test that, but maybe we should have. They ended up seeding the clouds and giving that a shot with a couple of failed attempts, but eventually it did end up working.
Oh, good.
It helps the air quality a lot.
Good. So you're back at Stanford, and you keep on getting told, well, you're tall. Yes, I'm aware of that. Thank you. And I'm rowing, and I'm aware of that. Thank you. But what moment did you say, wow, I could actually become an Olympian?
Probably when we set our first world record. So when I was in college, this is a collegiate world record, just to keep it in perspective, not overall world record. But for our age group, my pair partner and I were over in Amsterdam, and we broke the world record. And I was like, okay, there's some speed here. Should give this a shot for the Olympic team.
Yeah, I think the Olympic team might say, I think she might be good on this team. Yeah, or this pair anyway. So you now tell me about the world record and the current world record and the Olympics. What was the progression there? Like what was the timing?
Okay, so that collegiate world record I was just talking about in Amsterdam. Here I was thinking, like, great, like I've got a shot for this 2012 team because we set it in 2011, and then I promptly got cut from the 2012 team, moved to Oklahoma City, figured out exactly what it was I needed to improve on to be a better rower. So it was honestly, I feel like, although like a little heartbreaking and bad timing with it being the Olympic year right after I graduated, because rowers peak in their mid to late 20s.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah, and actually even later, late 20s and early 30s.
Really?
Just because it's such because you think about a marathon runner, so you're peaking there in your 40s, right? With your overall, and that's such an aerobic sport. And on the other end of the spectrum, you have gymnastics or something like that, where it's all power, and that's when you're like, 16 or 18 17, or younger. Right. Yeah. So rowing's kind of in the middle. Yeah.
Interesting. So you're in Oklahoma City.
Yeah, so I was in Oklahoma City, figured out that my biggest weakness was in fact my strength, which literally strength. I did a lot of weightlifting.
Okay.
Had a great weightlifting coach out there. And looking back, it was really good to have that, you have this big moment of failure. You don't accomplish what you were after. Like I was trying to make the 2012 team, did not. Figured out what it was that I needed to get there for the next round. And that following year in 2013, we broke the Rio world record for the 8 boat. So we were over in Switzerland. So hopefully we can trust their timing system over there with the Swiss. I think they're pretty good.
If they gave you the world record, of course you could trust it. What are you talking about? Yeah, of course it's accurate. Spot on. Wow. And so like, you guys cross the finish line. Is it right away or it says WR? Like, do you know right away that it's a new world record, or how does that work with the rowing?
There was a little bit of a delay. So our coxswain, so in the 8-person boat, there is one person that's basically like if you've ever been to a fitness class and there's someone with a little megaphone. Yeah. So they're the one yelling at you, telling you where you are in the race. And also they have this instrument that tells you how fast you're going.
Okay.
So it's a GPS and it'll tell you how fast you're going. And so she told us like at each of the 500-meter marks, which was like quarter of the way, halfway, 3/4 of the way through the race, that we were on pace to break the world record.
Oh.
So we felt like we were close, but then we had like a couple of seconds delay before it got put up on the big board, which is very exciting.
Oh my God, I could only imagine. There must have been some. All right, so you can be honest with me on this part here. I mean, you're honest with me all along. I'm just saying, I'd love to hear. Was it like a lot of partying that night, or was it more like you're still competing or something and whatever? What was that like? I mean, you're in Switzerland. How cool! That must have been amazing.
Yeah, so we were over in Lucerne, Switzerland, which is, first of all, a beautiful place.
Gorgeous, yeah.
Our coach told us, all right, you have one practice to look around and enjoy the beauty. And after that, keep your head in the boat, and I want you focused. So then after that race, we got to like look around a little bit more and enjoy the beauty. But literally the next day, because it was a World Cup, you fly out and you go back home to train again. Because there are 3 World Cups in the year that lead up to the big kahuna, like the big event at the World Championships. So we had to get right back into training. So, I mean, of course, there was some celebrating, but it was not at like a huge grand scale. But that was probably for the best because everyone was pretty exhausted, dehydrated, and everything. That would not be good for,
That would have been ugly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So you set this world record, and then you're continuing to train, and then 2016 rolls around. What happens?
Yeah, that's the in-between time, the continuing to train, where like nobody talks about it, but it's definitely where all the work gets put in.
Right. Of course.
And it's so funny because, the Olympics are every 4 years, and every athlete from every sport that, especially when I talk to people down when we were in Rio, or every year we'd go down to San Diego for 3 months.
Right.
Because normally we'd train in Princeton, New Jersey, where in fact their water does not stay liquid all the time. So when it turns to ice, we went down south. And at the training center in San Diego in Chula Vista, California, there are other athletes there. And it was interesting to hear their perspective about, you have all this off time and downtime in between the 4 years of the Olympics, where that's really where you're going to earn the medals and like make your strides, and you're doing it without like any outside media because they just come and check in for the Olympic Games and then yeah. So that was
now what at what point did you, I mean, during that time, are you able to, there's no real time to have a job or anything, right? I mean, how do you sustain yourself, or how does that work?
Yeah. So depending on the program, our men's team was actually, some of them were able to work where the coach had moved around practice so that they could work early in the morning. They'd go and train, work a little bit either from afar or in an office in Princeton, and then train in the afternoon.
Okay.
And our practice schedule was like all in the middle of the day. So it was from like 6:30 or 7:30, we'd have our first practice, come off the water at like 9:30 or 10. You'd have to do a little bit of PT to like loosen everything up afterward because we are doing this repetitive sport. And then you'd have another practice again at 1 o'clock and go until 3:30. And then if you had 3 practices that day, you'd go and lift at 5. So it was a very full schedule. It's like that 6 days a week where you're doing 2 to 3 practices a day.
Wow.
Yeah. And so your off day, this is, I guess, what makes people understand, like your off day on Sunday where you're supposed to be recovering, right? So you do an hour and a half of cardio to recover. And
of
that's your off
course.
day.
Yeah. What else would you do?
Exactly.
There's no couches. You guys don't have couches. There's no such thing. You don't even sleep.
Oh, no, recovery is definitely important. And I think that's what helps you get faster. But all of that volume, my nutritionist, Ben and Jerry, I don't know if you've heard of them before.
Well done.
Yeah, that was definitely what helps keep me.
I have to remember that one. I've got to remember that one. So I think what a lot of people don't realize, especially non-Olympians and even non-athletes across the board, is they may see the race or they see the game or they see the match, whatever it is, and they watch that and they don't realize that that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, that's the culmination of everything that's come before it, right? And so in your case, you're talking about all this training and 6 days a week, and the seventh day you're still doing something. That's more dedication than actually, obviously having a job, right? You're fully in, right? And so when you're fully in, it really doesn't, as you said earlier, it doesn't leave much time for, when you were at Stanford, you had to choose between sort of academics, a social life, and training. And I'm guessing the social life kind of took the back seat a little bit.
So I did prioritize academics. Yeah.
I figured.
But thankfully, thankfully the setup at Stanford was pretty social. So that wasn't a problem, but it was not like number one priority.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that really is with anybody else, is it? In college? Anyway, so may have been with me a little bit. I don't know. But when you got out of Stanford and now you're training full time, it sounds like. So what did you do in your case, Grace, to whether it's make ends meet, or is it something where you're being kind of funded by the Olympic Committee? How's that work?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. One, because we trained and moved into different locations, we're in Princeton, New Jersey, basically for the fall and the spring.
Okay.
And so most people opted not to have an apartment there because it was extra cost. You were only there 50 or 60% of the time. And instead, wonderful families in Princeton, New Jersey, like you were doing an exchange program, they would open up their homes and you would you'd have a host family. So you'd be adopted into the family for a couple of years and while you're training. So I lived with a family that started out with one kid and then graduated to 3, which was a good timing for me to move in with an 80-year-old woman, Marlene, who is now, so this is my host family who I was living with. So I moved in with her and learned all of the ways of Polish cleaning, how to do things correctly. She's like one of my best friends. So it's so funny, but
about cooking
and cooking for sure. Yeah. Guamki. Awesome. Yeah. Top secret recipes. I can't tell you.
Okay, good. That's amazing. So so obviously all these people are very, invested, I guess, in your career and how you end up performing. And then, so you, what's it like so you finally find out that you've made how'd you find out you made the Olympic team?
Yeah. So, there are 2 ways that you can make the Olympic team in rowing. One is you're selected by a coach. Okay. And the second is, you race, you beat everyone in the US, and then you go overseas and you have a top performance. Okay. So I was in the trials category. So we beat everyone here in the US. We did this para trial down in San Diego and we won. And then I had the opportunity to go over to Switzerland. So Lucerne, that same area where we set the world record a couple years before, hop in a pair, and then we came home with a gold medal there, which secured our Olympic berth, which was really exciting. Didn't the world record
thing kind of help or not?
For what do you mean? Like helping make the team?
Yeah. Can you count that somewhere on the checklist of all right, I'm tall, I'm fast, I'm really incredibly fit, I've trained a lot. Oh yeah. And I also have the world record. Can I make the Olympic team? It's because it's not in the right discipline, I guess, right?
Yeah. So everything is also very temporal. So during the Olympic year, how are you performing that year? How are you performing 1 month before the games? Yeah, we want to send the best athletes to the game. So there were a number of people that either got injured or just did not make the team for the Olympic team that were a part of the world record boat. So they were world record holders and then did not get to be Olympians in 2016, which is pretty shocking too. It shows a lot of the depth for the U.S. women. And I think a lot of that is thanks to Title IX with getting stronger athletes into a variety of different sports. That's rowing has helped equalize funding between men and women's sports, where our equivalent is men's football. So I love football, thanks to it helping fund rowing, basically. But as a result, our women's 8 boat, the one that I set the world record in, had won for 11 years straight. So we were the longest winning streak in history, like recent sport history. So that means like beating the Soviet hockey streak, and this is fact checked by ESPN, so I promise it's true. And so it's like won every world championship, won every Olympics for 11 years straight. And the team actually just lost in 2017, but came back this summer and won a gold. So
starting a new streak.
Starting a new streak. Yeah.
So you find out you've made the Olympics and you go down to Rio. What was that? Tell me your experience down in Rio, because, it's funny, in Shanghai, there was, in Beijing, there was a concern that the air quality was not great. But then I know in Brazil that the concern was the water quality, right? And they didn't want you falling into that lagoon or whatever it was, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So what was that like?
Yeah, we were braided with questions from reporters about mosquitoes and water. And they were like, tell us, have you ever been bitten by a mosquito? And like, what are you doing to protect yourself? And how are you protecting yourself from the water? So we actually did tried to take pretty big steps of precaution, because when you think about it, it's a competition once every 4 years.
Right.
If you get sick, like the day before the games, you are out. Like that was your Olympic dream done before the game. So it's okay, I think, every once in a while to become a little bit OCD and have a lot of hand sanitizer and keep yourself really safe. We literally put our water bottles in plastic bags, sealed them at the top to make sure we wouldn't get any lake water splashing on our water bottles before we had anything to drink.
Clever. Yeah. I like that. Good. So you now, in your case, did you arrive for the opening ceremonies, or did you have to come in a little bit later? What happened in your situation?
Yeah, so the Olympics are 2 weeks long, and rowing is in a positive way for making closing ceremonies and for also being able to enjoy the rest of the games. We're in the first week, which means we came out a week before the games, or maybe a week and a half, to get acclimated to the space. To practice on the water, figure out the wind patterns and what things are going to be like. Okay. And of course, always on race day, it changes. So you prepare and then it's different. Right. And yeah, so it was so interesting to be down there early, because another thing with the Rio Olympics was people were concerned things weren't going to be finished in time. Right. And so they had literally finished building our Team USA building. There are like just a series of high rises with like 20-story buildings, like 4 scattered around the Olympic Village. So our house was all Team USA. So all US citizens and Olympians housed in this building. Right. But other floors, it'd be like, 2 floors of South Korea, and then, a couple of Lithuania. Exactly. Yeah. So it was really interesting. And I think a little bit of geopolitics too, with who gets layered next to who in the same building. Funny. That's great. But were they doing like one of these things like, like, oh my God, we got like 8 seconds left. Hurry up. Like, like, what was it? There was a little of that. And what happened right before we arrived is the subcontractors were not paid for a couple of the buildings, including ours. So they took quick concrete and poured it down the showers, down the sinks, and down the toilets. So no way. Miraculously, the U.S. flew in some contractors to come down, and I don't even know how they did it, but they fixed the pipes within like a day. But that was a little bit jarring on our first. Devious, but that's kind of I like that. That's a pretty good trick, actually. Not that I would use it. I don't have access to concrete like that, but wow, dang. So that was different. I think with getting acclimated, but the space itself, like when we got to the course, it was amazing. Oh, good. Like Rio is a beautiful city. We got out onto the water, and the first time we went up to the start line, for our first heat, I looked up and I was a little bit nervous because it was our first race. And I looked up and you can see Christ the Redeemer from the lake.
Yeah.
And I did like a little, cross, and I was like, okay, done my little prayer. And now we're okay. I can rest easy.
Got the big man upstairs behind me or whatever it is.
Yeah, cool. Exactly.
Well, that's neat. So you perform in the Olympics, you come home, and at what point did you decide, well, you know what? I put in my time and it's time to move on. I mean, was there a specific date, time, or did you kind of go into the Olympics thinking that? What was your mindset with that?
Yeah, well, so I knew that I wanted to take a break afterward.
Okay.
And I probably would have been fine if the Olympics were like 2 years earlier, to be honest. Okay. But they do happen every 4 years. So in the spring, while I was doing that, those races where we had won in the pair and then went overseas and raced to qualify for the Olympics. Mm-hmm. While all of that was happening and Olympic tryouts were in full swing, I literally, in the middle of the day, would pop open my laptop and have a video interview in the boathouse with boats behind me. Like, I put on a button-up shirt, but have an interview in the boathouse while I was trying out for the Olympic team. And so I ended up joining this EY Olympic program where they recruited 8 female Olympians from across the globe. So it was a couple in Australia, 1 in Brazil, 2 here in New York, and the rest over in Europe. And we all joined.
All rowers or all sports?
All sports.
Okay.
Although, funny enough, there were exactly 4 rowers, which is the perfect number for a 4. So in 2017, we went over to England, and EY sponsored boat with 4 employees. We raced over at Royal Henley.
Oh, that is cool.
It was amazing. So Kim Crow, who had won the gold medal in the women's single from Australia, was in the boat. Olivia, a rower that came in second in the women's 8, was in the boat. And Bianca from the Netherlands raced in the boat with me as well. And
so not exactly the B team. I mean, you're all top ladies. That was amazing. So how'd it go? How'd the race go?
It was a really fun experience. And I think definitely, not your typical work trip, right? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. No. Work trips usually go a little differently, like hotel bars and whatever, but in conference rooms. So you're with Ernst & Young now, but what is the actual, tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing now.
So I am in more or less a consulting rotation program. So I started with our acquisitions team. So it's internal acquisitions. Basically, me being a human biology major, I have to break this down because I didn't even know what it was when I first started. But it's buying smaller consulting firms and adding them to EY. So like a digital consulting firm or something that's aligned to our strategy. And then I was on the integration and the making sure people lived up to the business case side of the team. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's so. Aside from your work now, are you still able to do any rowing, or do you even want to, or what's that been like?
Yeah, so I did that little race over in Henley, which was super fun with the other EY Olympians, and then I'm next weekend going up to Boston to race at Head of the Charles. So I'll be doing a little test there and seeing how many gears are still left that I can go up to. But Head of the Charles is actually the largest regatta in the world. Yeah. And I'm racing with Row House, which is this, if you've ever been to like a flywheel or a soul cycle, an indoor or a swerve, like an indoor spinning class in the cities, this is the equivalent for rowing, where it's indoor rowing. And so, so the coaches and I are racing in a boat together.
It's funny, when we met several weeks ago, I was talking to you about the idea. I thought it'd be cool. And we joked about this, but I still want some credit for this. I think it could be done for rowing, maybe a little expensive. But, we talked about how you can now get a pool where the water's coming at you and then you could swim, like resistance swimming in the pool. So it could be just a 10-foot length, right? So, I thought it'd be kind of cool to do the same thing for rowing, where you just have maybe a 20-foot long. Well, wait a minute, the boats are pretty long, but as long as the boat, a little bit longer than the boat, and just have the water coming at you, and you could do that. And you can train here in the city, anywhere, right?
That'd be amazing. And it's motivation to keep going faster. Otherwise, you're crashing a $60,000 boat.
Really, 60,000
for the top level 8. Yeah.
Oh my God. I mean, they have. Well, I mean, I'm assuming they have things like cup holders and
seat warmers and all that. Yeah.
Power windows.
One would wish. However, the top manufacturer for rowing boats is a German manufacturer, so that would be a no. Everything's simple.
Light on the extras. Well, you do have a sunroof, obviously. So tell me about I know you do a little bit of volunteer work. What's some of give me a couple of the causes that you believe pretty strongly in right now?
Well, we just haven't talked about how expensive the boats are. That is, there's this group in New York called Row New York, and they focus on underprivileged kids in the city, teaching them how to row and college prep as well and mentorship. So I definitely am a huge supporter of that group. They have 3 boathouses in Manhattan, Queens, and Brooklyn, where they'll teach the kids how to row. 100% have graduated from high school, and this has been going on for a number of years. So to have any program that's that successful is pretty amazing. They literally pay for kids subway cards to go back and forth from the boathouse.
Oh, that's great. Cool. Now, you mentioned earlier how you were told at a younger age that what do you call it? That the I guess it was. You said if you were tall and whatever you could row, you'd almost have a ticket to a college. Are any of these kids? Do you think they can get scholarships, or what's that like for them?
Yeah, and they a lot of them actually do go off to run college. So I think it's something like 99% have actually gone off to college. And then
wow.
Yeah, not necessarily doing rowing as well, but right. I remember last year when I went to go and speak with the kids, there was a lightweight rower who went to go and row at Columbia. So when I joined for a practice over there, just kind of testing the waters and doing a little bit of training with them, I was like, hey, I remember you from last year, when you were at Row New York in high school as a senior, and now you're at Columbia and Ivy League and rowing. Yeah.
But look, and we all know, and I know you know this, and I certainly know it, that, athletes, a lot of times they struggle with the transition when they leave the sport, and they don't really need to because, or they shouldn't, because there's so many amazing qualities that an athlete has to translate into a working environment, right? So, whether it's the stamina, the ability to learn playbooks, the ability to, sustain themselves through a variety of obstacles. There's so many different things that an athlete can bring with them as they move forward. And I think that, as you said earlier, even if some of these kids aren't pursuing rowing afterwards, the fact that they've been immersed in a sport and they get that athletic mindset, it's got to help them going forward. I think that's amazing what you're doing with them. And what's the other cause that you're passionate about?
So this is another rowing related thing, but it being the month of October and it being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, I'm actually on the board for Row for the Cure, which is a group for Susan G. Komen Breast Cancer Foundation. So there are like little efforts for like having everyone wear pink to the boathouse and a donation drive and regattas and everything that's just focused on breast cancer research, which is pretty great.
Yes, it is. That is wonderful. Well, now I'm going to take a little bit of a left turn, and we're going to transition into the segment that I like to call Hit Your Mark. It's sort of like Make Your Mark, but a little bit different. I'm going to just throw a couple quick questions at you, and we'll see how you do with these, but they're pretty easy. You got this covered.
Speed round. I'm on the edge of my seat.
Speed round. Okay, good. So the first one is this. Tell me about, throughout the course of your rowing career, surrounded by other rowers, can you think of a time that there was a specific prank done to any of your fellow rowers that you thought, whether it was a rookie prank or whatever it was, a prank that was done that was so funny that we can sort of keep somewhat PG?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, we actually had this prank war between the men's and the women's eights, the top varsity eights. And I remember one day, thankfully for the guys, I think it was pretty warm. And we had water balloons hidden in the boat, and we were checking them over at the guys and just having like a little bit of high school fun. However, to the detriment of our boat, the balloons were not great at popping, so they'd float on the water and they'd be hurled back. So be warned in your next water balloon fight. Make sure it hits something hard and not water.
Fill them all the way up. That's the problem. Is that when you don't fill them all, and they're still like a little too whatever it is, then they don't break. Not that I have any experience with that, but I'm just saying. Well, it's funny you say that because I remember years ago. I may have just seen this happen. I don't know if I was directly involved, but one of the cool things you could do is actually get a couple of surgical tubes and then basically make a giant catapult where you lean back and a couple people pull these suckers back and you launch the water balloons like 100 yards. That was fun, but that's separate, and don't try that at home. Anyway, so that's pretty funny. And if you do you have any specific, whether it's idols, whether it's an athlete idol or entertainment idol that you've met and you've been like either really impressed with what you saw or kind of like, not really that impressed? Tell me a little bit about any of those experiences.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I think part of that goes back to just role models in general.
Yeah.
And I have to give my parents a shout out here because my mom and my dad were the best with us. Celebrities and sports celebs, definitely put them to the side. Like my parents were the best. And also who I mentioned earlier, Marlene, my 8-year-old, whippersnapper. But I think it's interesting with social media too, like seeing how much of an impact athletes and celebrities can have on kids today. So I'm really impressed by Carrie Walsh Jennings, what she's doing for as a female athlete and a mom. And I think that people like that are pretty great.
Oh, that's a great answer. So it's gonna jump right into the next question, which is I'd love for you to give me the names of 3 people you would love to have dinner with or a drink with or just hang out with. And they could be alive, dead, doesn't matter, or somewhere in between, whatever. But give me, sort of 3 people you think would be really cool to hang out with.
Okay. This is in general, not just sports here.
Yeah, anybody. Okay.
So I think I would probably pick, first of all, you have to have a comedian in the room to keep things light.
Of course.
So I don't know if I'd pick, who would I pick for that? Probably... I don't know. What are some comedians that you're a fan of, Mark?
I'm a big Seinfeld fan. Chris Rock, Dave Chappelle.
Seinfeld is conveniently in New York City, and also a big fan of retro cars and likes coffee. So he can drive us to dinner. So I'll take that.
Excellent. That's great.
And then probably having like 2 entrepreneurs in the room or people who have been like successful in business. So whether that be like having Zuckerberg there and get his take on where he's going with Facebook, or, have, the lead of Microsoft or like someone, a pioneer from the past as well. I think it'd be interesting.
Oh, that's cool.
And a Bill Gates.
It's funny. Bill Gates, right. So, I would only have Zuckerberg show up if he promised to wear a jacket and tie. I want to see him out of his comfort zone, Same with that. What's his name? Bill Belichick too, But and then what about? I always thought it'd be cool to like hang out with George Washington, like just to see, what that was all about, or Lincoln, or one of these, or even Martha Washington, see what she thought of her husband. What's this guy like? Is he all right? What's his deal? So, but,
well, be sure to invite me to your dinner then.
Mine might be interesting. Although, George has got to take out his wooden teeth to eat. It's kind of embarrassing, but anyway, but look, so I, 2 more questions that I want to throw at you. One is, tell me a little bit about, what kind of, I don't like to ask what kind of legacy do you like to leave behind, because that infers that, you're not with us anymore. But what's the, what kind of lessons do you want to teach as you continue on throughout your career? What are some of, what kind of impact do you want to make on people?
So I think that you can have the biggest impact with kids, which is why I'm such a big supporter of Row New York. And honestly, so when I was in in middle school, I rode the nerd bus from the middle school to the high school, which was basically a group of 10 kids going to take AP math classes in middle school at the high school. And that had a really positive impact on me for, just pushing the math and the science and STEM across the board, but like specifically with women as well.
Nerd bus. Oh my God.
The nerd bus. Yeah, that's why.
Funny. But you know what? And I tell this to people all the time. Those people riding the nerd bus are the ones that are driving around the fancy cars later in life. So it's, or whatever they're doing. So that's all the power to you. That's awesome. So that's great. So then the last question, this is an easy one, but tell me about, and maybe it's not an easy question, but tell me about the moment, like what is the proudest moment of your life? Like, looking back, what was that one time you can say, wow, that was really cool. That was great. And it doesn't necessarily need to be when you won a medal or set a record or did this or that. It can be anything that you did. Like maybe you built a really cool sandcastle or climbed a mountain or whatever it is. But what sort of achievement or thing that you've done have you been like, wow, that's cool?
Yeah, I have to say setting the world record was pretty fun, especially after having been cut the year before. So that was a proud moment, not just for myself, but also like all the supporters, that weightlifting coach, my family, like all these host families that helped me along the way.
Right.
And like even my junior rowing coach too. But honestly, the first thing I thought of was, so we had a rowing competition over in South Korea.
Okay.
And my teammates and I went to Japan afterward. And it was just the season of like a 10-minute like total downpour and then sunshine. And so you'd get all these random downpours where it would just be like someone had turned on a faucet. And we picked up a couple of umbrellas, for our little tours. And I was walking around and there was this woman and her mother who is a fair, like older and like kind of walking around without umbrellas, and the downpour started. And like we all swarmed around this family and like with our umbrellas, got them to safety, which was actually like a mile of walking.
Wow.
But that, I think it's kind of the simple gestures in life and doing something good for someone where you don't honestly expect anything in return. And that was nice to do. So I was proud of myself and teammates for doing that.
Oh, that is. That's because you know what?
That's a little mushy gushy.
Well, hang on a second. Let me get a tissue first. Where's the tissue? But look, but you know what it is, Grace, is that carries on. And, you're just the type of person I love to highlight on these podcasts, because it's something where you're clearly making your mark, right? I'll throw in the plug, but you're making an impact on people around you and even going forward. And I think it's wonderful. And as you said, yes, it's, our kids it's so important to give them the right sort of a role modelship. If that is that a role model thing?
We're going with it, adding it to the dictionary.
But look, I think that it's great to do that, because it's great for them. And, one thing I used to say all the time, especially as I coach some actual retired athletes and so forth, is that a lot of times we hear about how challenging it might be to help everybody. It's just so many people to help. But I always like to say, look, just start with one. Just help one person, because that one person can take your message and what you're teaching them, and they can teach another one or two, and it multiplies and goes on from there, right? So keep that up. And I think it's great, the work that you're doing with Row New York, and also with your with the Susan B. Komen side charity there. And it's great. I mean, I want to see some video footage of you doing the rowing thing. So I'm gonna have to look you up. I'm gonna check that out. I bet that's pretty amazing to see. But I bet I think you're probably though not exactly upset that you're not still training though, right? Or do you miss it?
I do miss elements of it, and racing especially, but it's nice to have a weekend.
I know.
And a paycheck.
And the paycheck, right, exactly. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, look, Grace, I truly appreciate you being on today. And, it's been really interesting to hear not only from someone who's accomplished like yourself in a sport that took so much time and dedication and effort, but how you've really transitioned and taken the success of the sport and being at the Olympics and setting a world record. And now you're in a profession that you're impacting people professionally, and then you're also doing it as a volunteer. So thanks for being on. I really appreciate your time, and it was great to have you here.
Thanks so much. And may everyone else make your mark.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it. Love the plug.
Cool. Thanks, Mark. There it is.
Awesome. Thanks. Listen, have a great rest of your day.
Great. Thanks. You too.
Thanks so much for joining us today on this episode of Make Your Mark podcast. The goal of the podcast is to help you find ways to make your mark, to succeed in life, and to jump past your competition. Be sure to leave me a review on iTunes and Stitcher, and subscribe to be the first to hear new episodes. If you're looking for ways to make your mark, send me an email, mark@markmoyer.com, and I'll get back to you right away. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.